The IT infrastructure is similar to a public infrastructure. On top of an IT infrastructure sits applications that perform business processes. If you go back to the slides in the section 4.3, you'll see kind of how these layers occur, because you'll see the on top of the technical architecture, you have the data application architecture. It's kind of the same concept, but in the other diagrams, the bottom four layers consist of technology components such as computers, database management. This is all the technology pieces. The third layer is the human IT infrastructure, which translates the components. The second layer is the IT services, and the top layer is the shared or standards application layer, which includes the core applications. And this is kind of what that chart looks like. You have local applications that are running. You may have shared applications underneath it, shared and standard IT applications that allow the local applications to interface with each other, and then the shared services and information technology components. All of the items here in this box, in this the dotted line box, are really what constitutes the IT infrastructure. On the local application side, there are two pieces here that you got to be careful of. Sometimes the applications are actually acquired applications or purchased applications. They may be handled by the infrastructure department. In other cases, they are developed by developers in-house. And those applications would probably not be handled by infrastructure because the infrastructure group doesn't know really about those applications. Then you have the one in between. Applications that are acquired from the outside that are brought in by the applications group or even a business group and then have to be maintained. That's where the gray line is, because if it goes down, who's responsible? And most of the times in these IT squabbles, it's to figure out who's responsible for getting that up. Well, the application's working, so it must be the infrastructure. The infrastructure folks say, well, no, our infrastructure's up, so it must be the application. In the end, the business loses because there's no value being driven into the organization. This is another look at the IT infrastructure. This is shared, centrally coordinated, might have a larger section of this. Business Unit 1, Business Unit 2 might have a smaller pieces. You might have an enterprise-wide infrastructure supporting all of this. And again, it depends on this whole notion of the decentralization or co-location of various services. Larger organizations, it gets a lot more complex. Smaller organizations, things are generally centrally coordinated. The IT investments are important because what infrastructure investments focus on, number one, is economies of scale. I want to try and reduce my overall expenses because infrastructure costs are administrative expenses. It's very rare that you can have anything other than that. You may have a capital project where you have a new system that comes in which case the equipment might be capitalized, but the network and some of the other pieces are not because they are already part of your overall infrastructure. In some cases, outsourcing actually helps with this cost justification. Support for business programs is dependent. There's a dependency here because IT is a business expense, infrastructure is a business expense. So one of the things that we want to focus here on is if we do not have buy-in as a business expense from the business to say maintaining our infrastructure appropriately, reducing risk, where generally you're going to have a problem in the event that there is an issue because there is no insurance policy. We may have only paid for a certain amount of backup in terms of recovery time, and when a problem occurs, we're not able to adequately recover. And we see this with some of the companies that have had actual problems here during Hurricane Sandy. Infrastructure also needs the ability to meet changes in the marketplace. They want to be able to adapt quickly. So they make investments to ensure that they can adapt as quickly as possible, which means we have extra bandwidth, or we have storage that can be used by multiple services or multiple applications or multiple machines. We can do virtualization. I have a large machine that can be split up into these virtual servers quickly so that if someone needs a server, I don't have to go out and procure something and wait 2 to 3 weeks for it to arrive and then configure. I can just take part of the machine that's basically sitting idle, split it, and say, here is your server that you can now utilize and load up software on. So here's the question. Within your organization, what would be the primary reason for investment in infrastructure? Can you think of a few examples that were wise and others that were not so wise? Now, what I'm asking here is not really the obvious. What I'm asking is, you've seen investments in infrastructure in your organizations. And you've seen, maybe you've seen lack of investment in infrastructure. Why were those decisions made? What was the economic environment? Sometimes it's not internal, it's actually an external pressure that's preventing them from doing that. So, and what priority would you give to various investments within your company? Is our disaster recovery plan really a high priority? Or is our ability to have extra bandwidth a high priority? What rationale would you give for that in comparison to projects that generate revenue? And remember, these projects in infrastructure are really expenses. They're not revenue generating, so you're going to run into a problem. Every company is in a different situation, so no two decisions are alike. But it's the thought process that's important. So I'd be curious to see what you say on the discussion boards.